So, you've hung up your stethoscope at the hospital after years of training and decided to set up your shop as a GP in your very own medical practice. Congratulations! It's a brave new world out there for you, and no doubt you're feeling excited and maybe a little nervous about all the adventures that await. But before you can start seeing patients and racking in the big bucks, there may be a few things you need to take care of first. Among them is getting your head around the tax implications of earning personal services income. Then you also have to consider thinking about how you're going to make the most of the tax deductions available to you and your business. Oh, and how to protect your assets along the way as well. So, as exciting as this time is for you, it's also important for you to take one step back and wrap your head around the business admin side of things. And once you've done that, you're good to go and put all that studying to good use. There's no need to panic though. We're here to help. In today's video, Sean and myself are going to run through some of the key considerations so you can hit the ground running. So let's get stuck right in it. Sean will explain how it works.
The most important place to start is to establish what kind of structure you're going to use for your medical practice or allied health business. Most doctors receive their income from using their personal skills. In other words, you're not necessarily going to be selling goods to make your income. You're going to be selling your personal services by medically assessing your patients or giving them advice on how to treat their illness or manage certain symptoms. The ATO calls this personal services income. And when you earn PSI, it's kind of treated similarly to sole traders or employees, tax-wise. So basically, you would be taxed at your individual marginal tax rate. Back in the day, people were finding ways to sidestep these tax implications by setting up interjectory companies. So they were getting away with paying less income tax and having access to more deductions. Basically, any business producing income from personal services is subject to PSI rules. According to these rules, medical practitioners aren't able to claim certain deductions. And if the PSI is received through an entity, it must be attributed to the individual practitioner, unless certain tests are passed. We covered these tests in more detail in our other video about PSI, so make sure to check that out. If you pass all the PSI tests and you're running a business, most small businesses would tend to open in a company structure due to many benefits such as asset protection, tax planning, and succession planning. In the company, your tax rate will only be 25%, and there are quite a few tax deductions you'll have access to. But that can't be the only reason why you set up the company. You need to show to the ATO that you did not just set up a company to avoid your tax obligations. You need to have other valid reasons of doing so. One of the biggest benefits of having a company structure versus a sole trader structure is because a company provides protection of limited liability. If I use my accounting business as an example, I set up ABC Accounting Service as a company to protect my personal assets and establish a legitimate brand from which I could advertise my services, hire more employees, and grow my business. So, what structure should you set up for your business?
The most common structure that doctors and other medical practitioners use for their business is to establish a service-based entity as well as run a professional practice. There are two main entities in this arrangement, a professional practice and a service-based entity. The professional practice, which is typically structured as a company or a sole trader, would run the main medical business and provide a service as a doctor or a surgeon. The service-based entity, on the other hand, is an independent entity which operates as a separate business providing admin support services to the professional practice. For example, the service entity would typically conduct activities to hire professional staff, employ all the staff on behalf of the professional practice, negotiate lease agreements, purchase and provide the equipment to the professional practice, and also incur all day-to-day expenses as well. Then the service-based entity will charge a service fee to the professional practice for conducting this. Do note that the service fee must be at a commercial rate. The general accepted rate for service fee is between 35 to 45% of the income from the customers depending on the services provided. Sometimes, it could also be a markup on the service entity's cost. The service-based entity is usually structured as a discretionary trust or a unit trust or sometimes the company. So here's an example of a profit and loss statement for a service entity. You can see that the entity charges recruitment fees or management fees of $445,000 to the medical practice. And that income is then used to pay staff salaries, rent, and other costs which are associated with running that medical practice. There are two main benefits to implementing this kind of structure. The first is asset protection and risk mitigation. By splitting the income, the risks of running a medical practice are separated, and some of the group's assets will be protected in case of a legal dispute. If you're running a medical practice, you would know that the risks involved in operating a medical business are extremely high. So this is very, very important. And the second benefit is that it is a more tax-effective structure and cleaner structure for the two businesses to grow. There are technically two businesses in this structure: the professional practice, doctor providing a service, and the service-based entity, medical clinic. The professional practice is linked to PSI and the profits must be attributed to the doctor or practitioner. The medical clinic can be run independently from the doctor and is not impacted by PSI. Again, you need to be aware that there are general anti-avoidance provisions to prevent you from getting a tax advantage by deliberately structuring your tax affairs to pay less tax. So, if you want to implement this service entity structure, you need to be able to show the ATO that you have sufficient evidence to prove that the service entity adds value to your business, has performed substantive functions for your business, and that it has conducted all the services provided. It's best to speak to a great accountant to get advice on this structure. Speaking of a great accountant, Sean, can you go through the next steps you should think about?
Once you're all set up, you need to make sure to take advantage of the tax deductions available to you to further minimize your tax liability. The three biggest tax deductible expenses are usually depreciation on property, business equipment and vehicles, and wages to staff. I find that so many business owners do not use the benefit of tax depreciation deductions enough. So I would highly recommend that you get clued up on things like the instant asset write-off, and I chat more about this in this video. So make sure to check this out. You can also claim deductions on things like business insurance, software expenses, interest expenses on business loans, your medical registrations, and education and training for your staff. Before we jump into the last section of the video, there's just one more thing that I want to talk about, which is GST. Now, in general, medical services are GST free, but cosmetic procedures aren't. So, if your medical practice provides cosmetic services, you'll need to register for GST. It's worth noting that if you voluntarily register for GST, you can claim back credits on some expenses. For example, if you went to an interstate medical conference and spent $1,000 inclusive of GST for the conference ticket, $500 for food on the day of the conference, $500 for accommodation, $1,000 for flight tickets, you could make a 10% claim back on those expenses. This means that you could be reimbursed up to $300, and every dollar counts, so I highly recommend for a medical practice to register for GST. Alright, so that's what you need to know about structuring your business in what I believe to be the most tax-effective way. Once you've decided on how you want to set up your business, you can move on to the actual setting up part. You need to first get all your business registrations out of the way. For example, you will have to register for an Australian business number and a tax file number, which are unique numbers that ASIC and the ATO uses to identify your business. Then there is PAYG. PAYG withholding is a tax that you pay on behalf of your employees. And PAYG installments relate to the tax that you pay on your profits. You can also register for GST at this stage. Once that's out of the way, you need to set up your bank account, and I recommend that you always set up a separate bank account for each entity. One for the service entity and the other for the professional practice. And if you have a trust within your structure, set up a bank account for that entity as well. After that, you must get all the necessary insurances, such as professional indemnity insurance, public liability insurance, and workers' compensation. We have a separate video on this too. Your business accountant can help you with setting up the accounting software, payroll, and single touch payroll. I would also get them on board to help you with all the tax requirements like tax returns, business activity statements, all of that stuff, you know? And lastly, I'd suggest you to get a lawyer on board with you to help you with contracts and all the legal stuff. So that's all the basics you need to know to sort out your taxes. I know this was a mouthful, but I hope this video was insightful in helping you navigate all the back-end details of running a medical practice business. Of course, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comment below or book a consultation with one of our accountants or business advisors. We'll be happy to help.
And please share this video with anyone else who is thinking about starting their medical practice. That's it from us, guys. Thank you very much and see you guys next time.